Charlie Kirk was assassinated in front of thousands of people during a college event. But the story is way darker than anyone realizes. From bizarre bullets engraved with internet memes to a nationwide manhunt, and even world leaders turning his death into a political weapon. Today, we're breaking down the dark truth behind one of the most shocking assassinations in modern America. In early 2025, Charlie Kirk had a big plan. He wanted to launch something called the American Comeback Tour. This wasn't just another speaking event, yet it was a huge campaign to bring his message to college campuses across the United States. For years, Kirk had made his name by being loud, bold, and unapologetic on campuses, places where conservative voices were usually outnumbered. He believed that young people were the key to keeping his movement alive. So, this tour was supposed to be his way of making sure conservative students felt like they had a leader, someone who would speak directly to them. The first stop of the fall season was Utah Valley University, UVU, in Orem, Utah, on September 10th, 2025. This wasn't an ordinary choice. Utah is a conservative state, but UVU is known for being pretty mixed in opinions, with a lot of students who lean different ways politically. So it was the perfect stage for Kirk to make an impact. He wanted to prove that he could still pull massive crowds and energize young conservatives, even when many students disagreed with him. Not everyone was happy about his visit. Before the event, a petition was circulated asking the university to cancel Kirk's speech. Some students argued that his views created division, that his presence would cause conflict, and that the campus wasn't a safe place for his kind of politics. But in the end, the university stood by its decision. They said free speech was important, and as long as there was no direct threat, Kirk had the right to speak. For Kirk and his team, this was a win. For his opponents, it was a bitter reminder that his influence was hard to stop. September 10th, 2025, started like any other big campus event. By noon, the amphitheater at Utah Valley University was filled with thousands of people. Charlie Kirk, standing under a large tent, was doing what he did best: debating, answering questions, and throwing out sharp lines that got both cheers and boos from the crowd. He had always thrived in that kind of environment. For him, confrontation wasn't something to avoid. It was fuel for his movement. One student asked him about mass shootings in America, a topic Kirk often touched on. He usually argued that the Second Amendment was worth protecting, even if it meant more gun deaths every year. For some, his words were inspiring. For others, they were infuriating. But this was nothing unusual. This was how Kirk operated, taking on controversial issues head-on, without backing down. But then, at exactly 12:23 p.m., everything changed. A single gunshot echoed across the campus. At first, people were confused. Some thought maybe it was a firecracker or some sort of prank. But within seconds, the horrifying truth became clear. The bullet had come from the roof of the Losay Center building, about 142 yards away. It struck Kirk directly in the neck. Witnesses described it as a terrifying scene. Blood poured out instantly, and Kirk collapsed, going completely limp. People screamed. Chaos erupted. Students and attendees threw themselves to the ground, trying to avoid what they thought might be more gunshots. Former Congressman Jason Chaffetz, who happened to be in the audience, later said, "As soon as the shot went out, everybody hit the deck." After Charlie Kirk's assassination, the gunman didn't just disappear into thin air like in the movies. His every move was tracked by cameras around the campus. What shocked many later was how calmly he carried out his plan. That morning, he arrived at Utah Valley University in a gray Dodge Challenger. To anyone watching, he looked like a normal person going about his day. He didn't stand out, and that was probably his plan: to blend in. Instead of heading straight to the event, he wandered toward a parking garage, changing clothes to look less noticeable. Surveillance footage later showed him moving through grassy areas, checking his phone, and eventually climbing stairs that led to the Losay Center building. At 12:22 p.m., just 1 minute before the shooting, Cameras caught him lying flat on the roof of the building. He had a rifle in his hands, aimed directly at where Charlie Kirk was speaking under the tent. Everything was calculated: the angle, the timing, and the distance. Seconds later, at 12:23 p.m., he pulled the trigger. As chaos broke out below, the shooter didn't panic. Instead, he ran across the rooftop, heading toward the side where the ground was higher. Witnesses later said they saw him hanging off the roof and dropping down to the ground. Palm prints and shoe marks were later found on that same spot, confirming how he escaped. From there, he headed into a wooded area north of the campus. That's where investigators later found the weapon he had used: a Mauser-type bolt-action hunting rifle, chambered in .30-06. But what made this weapon especially strange were the bullets. They weren't ordinary. Each bullet had weird engravings and even internet memes scratched onto it. Some referenced video games, songs, and random jokes. It was disturbing because it showed that the shooting wasn't just political. It was mixed with bizarre online culture, too. The manhunt for the shooter lasted 33 long hours. Police locked down the area, helicopters searched from above, and FBI agents swarmed the scene. At first, authorities thought they had their man. 2 different people were arrested in connection with the shooting, but both turned out to be unrelated. This caused even more confusion when FBI Director Kash Patel posted on social media that a suspect was in custody, only to take it back 90 minutes later. The public was left frustrated and anxious, unsure if the real killer was still out there. Finally, the chase ended on September 11th. The shooter, later identified as 22-year-old Tyler James Robinson from St. George, Utah, turned himself in. His parents, who had seen the FBI's released images, convinced him to surrender before things could get worse. Tyler was training as an electrical apprentice at Dixie Technical College. Before that, he had briefly studied at Utah State University, but dropped out after just 1 semester. On the surface, his life looked like that of a normal young adult still trying to figure things out. Childhood photos showed him with his family at gun ranges and on vacations, looking like the kind of boy next door you wouldn't think twice about. His family was deeply conservative and members of the Mormon Church. They supported Trump, and politically, they leaned to the right. But as investigators dug deeper, they realized Tyler had changed in the last year. While his family stayed conservative, Tyler began moving in the opposite direction. He started supporting gay and trans rights, which clashed heavily with the values he grew up around. His worldview had shifted, and this caused tension at home. At the time of the assassination, Tyler was living with a transgender roommate. This person wasn't considered a suspect, but investigators said they later turned over private messages that showed Tyler had been planning the shooting. The roommate reportedly had no idea about the plan and was described as being shocked when they found out. Tyler's background didn't include any criminal activity. He had no record of arrests, no violent history, and no signs that he was connected to any extremist group. That's what made the case so unsettling, Yen. His radicalization seemed deeply personal. Instead of joining an organization, he was shaped by online communities, internet culture, and his own growing frustrations. After the shock of the assassination, everyone wanted to know the same thing. Why did Tyler Robinson do it? What pushed a 22-year-old to plan and carry out something this extreme? The answer didn't come right away. But soon, prosecutors revealed a set of text messages Tyler had sent to his roommate. In one of them, he wrote, "I had enough of his hatred." Some hate can't be negotiated out. These words gave a small but important clue about his mindset. He clearly saw Charlie Kirk as someone filled with hate, especially toward communities Tyler had started supporting, like LGBTQ people. Instead of arguing or debating, Tyler chose to act violently. Investigators also discovered that this wasn't something he decided in the heat of the moment. He had actually planned the attack for about a week. Messages pulled from Discord, an online chat platform, showed Tyler talking about the shooting in a half-joking, half-serious way. At one point, when FBI photos of the suspect went public, Tyler even joked that he looked like the guy in the pictures. He told friends he'd have to burn his manifesto, almost treating it like a dark joke rather than a real confession. But those messages ended up becoming serious evidence against him. What made things more complicated was how different Tyler's new beliefs were compared to the way he was raised. He came from a conservative Mormon family that fully supported Trump and Republican politics. But somewhere along the way, Tyler broke away from that. According to Utah's governor, Tyler had started leaning toward what he called a leftist ideology. He became more outspoken about supporting gay and trans rights, and he openly disagreed with many of the values his family lived by. If Charlie Kirk's assassination shocked America, the political response made it even worse. Within hours of the shooting, politicians from both sides started using the tragedy to push their own agendas. On one side, Donald Trump and his allies wasted no time. Before investigators had even confirmed the shooter's motive, Trump blamed the radical left. He claimed that left-wing ideologies were encouraging violence and promised a crackdown. He even threatened to label Antifa and certain NGOs as terrorist organizations. For his supporters, this sounded like strong leadership, but for his critics, it looked like Trump was using a tragedy to silence his political opponents. Democrats, meanwhile, also condemned the shooting. They said violence had no place in politics, but they quickly turned their focus toward Trump. Many accused him of exploiting the moment to go after anyone who disagreed with him. To them, this wasn't about protecting people. It was about gaining more power and shutting down criticism. Free speech advocates also raised red flags. They warned that what Trump was suggesting could easily turn into something like McCarthyism 2.0, a time in U.S. history when people were hunted down and punished just for being accused of un-American ideas. The fear was that, under the excuse of fighting violence, the government could start targeting anyone who criticized conservative leaders. And that fear wasn't completely out of nowhere. After Kirk's death, a wave of firings and suspensions started happening across the country. Teachers, military officers, and even regular workers faced punishments for comments they made about the assassination. Some people had only posted small things online, but they lost their jobs anyway. Even comedian Jimmy Kimmel wasn't spared. His jokes about the event led to his show being suspended. The assassination of Charlie Kirk didn't just shake America, it became international news within hours. Leaders around the world reacted, and their responses showed how global politics is always watching what happens in the United States. World leaders from Britain, Israel, Canada, Italy, and many other countries quickly condemned the attack. They called it shocking, brutal, and a reminder of how dangerous political violence can be. Some leaders sent messages of sympathy to Kirk's family and to America as a whole. For them, it wasn't just about Charlie Kirk the man, but about what his killing symbolized. The risk of democracy falling apart when political disagreements turn into bullets. But the reactions weren't the same everywhere. Right-wing politicians in Europe took Kirk's death and used it to fuel their own agendas. They pointed at the attack and said, "Look, the left is dangerous. Their ideas lead to violence." For them, Kirk's assassination was proof that left-wing activism and liberal movements were something to be fought against harder. His death became a rallying cry for their own followers, especially in countries like Hungary, Italy, and France, where conservative leaders already push back against progressive politics. On the other side, progressive leaders in Europe and elsewhere warned against doing exactly that. They said the tragedy should not be used as a political weapon. Their message was clear. Violence should be condemned no matter who it's against, but using it to attack your political enemies only makes things worse. Back home in the U.S., Trump made big moves to show how important Kirk was to him. He ordered that all federal flags be flown at half-staff. This is something usually done to honor major political figures or national tragedies. Then, in a very dramatic gesture, Vice President J.D. Vance personally escorted Kirk's casket on Air Force Two, the plane normally used by the vice president. That alone sent a message that Kirk wasn't just another activist, but someone the government wanted to honor at the highest level. If you found this video eye-opening, smash that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss what we've got coming next.